Good day. Today we're going to be looking at layouts and specifically how to take an architectural drawing and place it on a layout for a sheet to print or create a PDF of. And so we begin the process by having our drawing, and this is a drawing that we previously created, and the drawing size is actual true size. So this 10-foot wall is truly a 10-foot wall. It literally is drawn in true size. The doors are 6 foot wide and so forth. And so having this ability makes it easier to edit the drawing, but it makes it harder to plot. There's some individuals out there that like to scale this to make it fit on a piece of paper in the model to print it. Well, that would have worked really well about 30 years ago. But in today's environment, there's a much better tool to work with, which is the layout tool. And that layout tool allows us to set up a drawing sheet. And we can set up multiple layouts to depict multiple different parts of a drawing. So in this case, we're going to set up at least 2 drawing sheets, one of the floor plan and then one of the elevations. And we'll show you how that'll work. So initially, when I right mouse clicked on the layout, I had different options available. I can create a new layout. I can work from templates, and a template is a saved drawing file. So if I create a blank drawing sheet and I import my title blocks into the layout, and then I can save all the title blocks and different paper sizes that I may be using, I can then change that DWG file to a DWT file, and it becomes a drawing template that I could then insert into any drawing environment, thus bringing my title block in. And so I'll do a representative demonstration of that on this particular video with the template. So we have a layout, and from the layout we have the ability to work with also drafting standards set up. And again, not too much, but in terms of how the projection type is going to be set up, how the different views are going to be dealt with for threaded positioning and so forth. And so you have a little bit of control on how the view of that will look. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that when I right mouse click on layout 2, the page setup manager is not an option. So to invoke the page setup manager, you actually have to click into the layout first, then right mouse click, and then the page setup manager is available. So I'm going to go ahead and edit layout number 1, and we're going to go ahead and make this active. Hit the escape key to make sure I'm out of all my commands. And in layout number 1, I'm going to go ahead and choose the page setup manager. Well, the page setup manager asks us, well, what layout am I going to be working with, layout 1 or layout 2? They're both active. Well, I'm going to modify layout 1. And it tells me what the standard setting is. Currently it's 8.5 by 11. And I'm just going to go ahead and modify that. Now, could I actually import other layouts? I absolutely could. And again, I can save title blocks and then import those layouts from here. So I'm going to go ahead and choose modify. And this looks a lot like the plot dialog. Matter of fact, it is the plotting dialog, just a little bit different because it deals with the page setup and not necessarily directly with the plotting. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and choose AutoCAD high quality PDFs. And so there are different capability of the PDF printing files. And so I'm going to do the AutoCAD high quality PDF. You could be setting this up for your printer. And so your printer or plotter that you have is the one that you want to choose, and there's a reason behind that. There are a few basic PDF options here. Basically, it is the vector quality and how is it going to look. Are you going to create any bookmarks from the data? Hyperlinks, will they be transferred in? Will you include the layer information? So because then the user could take that PDF file and deal with layers. Do you want to capture fonts from the drawing environment? So I'm going to say yes to all these, and my lines are going to overwrite each other. So one line will overwrite another line in the design. So right now it's in ANSI A, but in PDF capability, I can print to any size. And so there's a variety of ISO sizes, which is metric scaled. And we also have standard ABCDE drawing paper sizes. And so selecting, in this case, I'm going to be selecting a B size 11 by 17. And again, the 11 by 17 is the paper size that I'm working with. I'm going to be printing the layout is actually what I'm going to be focusing on. Scale's automatically a 1-to-1 scale of the layout because when I choose OK, what's going to happen is it's going to increase the paper size here to 11 by 17. So layout 1 now is an 11 by 17 sheet of paper. So it is a what you see is what you get kind of print. What we have internally here is a layout, and this layout has a viewport, and we're looking through the viewport to the model. And so we're able to control the viewport like we are an object, in this case with grips. And I'm going to go ahead and expand the viewport to just outside the dotted lines. If you notice that these dotted lines on the outside of the printout, what that indicates is the plottable area. So anything outside of the dotted lines will not plot. So that's what I'm moving the viewport just outside the dotted lines. That ensures that I won't print that box that you see as the viewport. I could also put the viewport on a non-plotting layer, and that's easy enough to do. So I can create a layer and new layer name, and we can call it viewport. And the viewport layer, I can turn off the plotting capability right here. So that's now a non-plotting layer. And I'm going to choose a very unique color so that way we know that it is on that layer. So it's going to be a really dark green. And I'll close that. So to change an object, we're going to grip the outside object. We're going to change it to the viewport layer. So that viewport layer is that dark green color, and that will not plot. So whether it's inside the dashed lines or outside the dashed lines makes no difference now. That box will not plot. What will plot is what's inside. And so the next step is, well, what scale are we going to plot at? Because that's always the next big problem is, all right, how are we going to make this fit and what scale? So the easiest way to do this and to teach this is using the song Hokey Pokey. And part of the song is right foot in, right foot out, right foot in, shake it all about. So we double click in, we can double click out. And as long as we double click out somewhere outside of the green box, we double click off the viewport. If we double click inside, I can use the pan command and move it all about. And you can do the hokey pokey from there. Which also means that I can double click inside on the wheel, and now it does a zoom extents. And so that zoom extents maximizes the printable and viewable environment. But in reality, I still don't have a truly usable scale. Because right now the scale is shown here on the bottom. It's 0.02222223. Not very usable. However, if I click on that number, I get a variety of scales. Now, some of these I've added to my environment. And once I add them into AutoCAD, they stay. And so that makes it really nice. Now, how do you add a scale? So if you right mouse, whoops, 1 to 2 is going to be too big. If you right mouse click, okay, so let's go ahead and set up a scale that we can use. There's an 1/8 inch equals a foot. Now I can typically right mouse click on here and edit the scale or come up with a variety of scale. And it's at the bottom that allows us to choose and create a custom scale. There's a little slider bar here, and since I've added so many extra scales, it doesn't pop up. So the custom scale allows us to type in a scaling factor. So if I want to add a one inch plotting scale to 3 inches in the drawing, I can add 1:3, and it's 1 paper unit to 3 drawing units. And now that 1 to 3 scale will show up on my list. But architectural scales, I can set up those too. And there's you got a 1/4, 3/16 to a foot. And if you remember, we kind of set this drawing up in the other drawing environment for a 1/4 inch equals a foot scale, roughly. But I might want to have it a little bit larger. You can see what I can do is once I'm inside this viewport, again, hokey pokey, double click in, I can change the scale of just one object. In this case, I might want to make it a half scale. And if it's half scale, it will fit and it will print. So let me go ahead and make sure it says a half scale because I inadvertently moved it. So there's a half scale equals a foot. So for every foot, it prints 1/2 of an inch. If I double click out, no matter what I do, that's going to stay a half scale. So if I draw a rectangle, like I'm creating a title block, I can draw a rectangle inside the dashed lines, and that will plot, and that rectangle is now a title block, or could be a title block component. And so if I double click out of the viewport, I can print what's on top of the paper. When I double click in the viewport, I'm editing what's in the drawing. Literally, if I add a circle into this and I go back to the model, notice the circle is there. It is truly a pass-through, but it's a different view scale. That's all I'm able to control here is paper size and viewing scale. If I right mouse click and copy this, so I'm going to copy layout number 1. And so layout number 1, let's see, move copy, create a copy, choose OK. So I now have layout bar 1, which is what we're looking at now. And then I have layout number 1. Well, layout bar 1, or layout parentheses 2, if I double click in, and I change the position of it, I can now put in one of the elevation views. But what happens is this elevation view is a little close. So I might have to go back to the model, use the move command, and move the elevation view a little bit farther over, just so it gets out of the viewport. Now I can turn off the grid by using the grid mode, and the grid mode turns off the grid. And it won't turn it off in every layout, just that layout. So I can also rename layouts. So this layout could be front view or front elevation. So front elevation. And that could be layout number 1, could be floor plan. And so again, naming makes it a lot easier to know exactly what you're looking at. And so copying the layouts, and if I add a new layout, so if I add a new layout and it's layout number 1, guess what? It's back to 8.5 by 11, or is it? Let's check. Check the page manager, 8.5 by 11. So it goes back to the default value. And so we'd have to set up the new paper size, or I can delete this and then just copy the floor plan or the front elevation. So the key thing to remember about layouts is that you can edit them. When you double click in, look for the scale information on the bottom, add custom scaling if you need it, and then you're able to totally control what you're going to print. When you double click out of the viewport, I can then copy in or insert, if I wanted to bring in a raster image in or a block, I can insert a block like any other AutoCAD drawing. So now I'm working on top of the drawing sheet, and I can create the title block, put the text in, edit the text, which is totally outside of the model itself. So the drawing stays safe and the title block is separate. So hopefully that cleared up some layout questions and how to set up a layout and how to be accurate with the layout. One final thing. I'm going to show you how I can set up a layout from a template. So if I right mouse click and choose from template, in my template folder, and there is an actual folder of templates, I can choose my MET1371 class template. And then when I do that and I choose open, it's going to ask me, am I going to bring in an ANSI A title block or an ANSI B size title block? Because those are the two that we typically use in the class that we can print. And so if I choose an ANSI A title block, I can choose OK. And what it's going to do is bring in an ANSI A title block sheet. Well, this sheet already has the title block on it. And again, this title block is outside, in this case, of the printed area because I am setting up a PDF. However, I can edit the drawing name. It automatically brings in, it can bring in the date, or I can automatically update the date. I can edit the scale, and there is a new feature that I can make this an automatic scale set based on the viewport scale. So again, the whole idea is that I can double click in, take a look at my drawing. It's no different than the standard template that we were using. I just have to adjust the scaling factor to the paper size. So in this case, it's going to be an 1/8 inch equals a foot, and I might have to move it over so that way the other objects don't show up. If I go 1/4 inch equals a foot, I think that will fit very well also. And so 1/4 inch equals a foot will be the perfect scale type. So now I can actually go in here, double click on that, and it's just text. So it's 1/4 inch equals 1 foot. And so I can control all that information automatically. So title blocks through templates, and again, a template is just a DWG file, and that's a really smooth way to bring in your drawings and control the look and feel of the objects and the drawings that you're creating. Well, have a great day. We hope to see you soon. Bye now.